The comment specifically, you may remember, we were talking about energy, and I always ask about other things. And we talked about specifically, the question was starting to say, feel any pressure to keep a Republican seat in Western New York, with Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Walsh retiring. And you elaborated on a number of different things. And the end of the comment is what you probably hearing a lot now, is a quote saying, "I firmly believe that the Democratic majority wants the American public to suffer and to hurt so they can make some political gains at election time, and I think that's wrong." Your thoughts on that comment 11 weeks later and why this has resurfaced again?
Well, when you and I talked 11 weeks ago, Sean, the most pressing issue confronting America was the high cost of energy. We don't have mass transit in the 29th Congressional District for the most part. People have to drive to work and drive back. And I had been hearing for 4 and 5 months how much it was hurting people. Now, my opponent, I don't think really understands or doesn't get it, because people are still hurting. Even though the price is lessened a little bit, it's still far above what it was when the Democrats took control of Congress back in 2006. And they've done nothing. So when you look at the growing frustration that I'm hearing from people about how they're losing their jobs, how they can't get to work, how they can't continue their life as they knew it before, it's very frustrating when you see a Democratic majority stay away, as they did intentionally, from addressing the issue of lowering the price of gasoline by adopting a comprehensive energy plan. And so that's what I was forcing and saying to you, was it's very, very frustrating, and it leads one to believe that, in fact, this is done for an intentional purpose. I still believe that. I hope I'm wrong. And I said then, and I'll continue to say it now, I think that's absolutely wrong to play politics with the lives of people who are hurting so badly.
So you're not backing off on these statements in any way?
No, everything I see, I look at the issues that, in fact, were not addressed. Social Security reform, immigration reform, entitlement reform, none of those were addressed. Energy is most immediate, most important issue that really needs to be addressed at that time. Now, 11 weeks later, we have a blip in the economy that really needs to be addressed as well. And it is being addressed with regard to recovery legislation that we passed, which was a come together, if you will, both sides of the aisle working together to try to resolve a credit freeze, which would severely threaten jobs in the 29th Congressional District and the country as a whole.
You said those comments, and you're touching on some of that right now, in the context that, in just the last week, the Congress passed 270 bills, 74 of those were naming post offices. Now, you then followed up with that comment. Truly, wouldn't it be in the Democrats' best interest to do good for their two terms, the 2 years that they've had control of the Congress? I mean, does your comment reflect that they haven't done their job in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I was voicing the frustration that I was feeling at the time. I'm still feeling. I was elected to go to Congress to solve problems, and then major problems that the country's facing. And I don't see the Democratic majority doing that. For the last year and a half, they've been playing politics with the lives of people in the 29th Congressional District, and I believe the country. And I actually think I believe that that's wrong. I don't believe that they should be playing politics to try to enlarge their majority so that they have the power structure that they can survive any ups and downs. And I think that's wrong. I think what the American people want is for us to solve the issues that are confronting us, whether it's Social Security, whether it's energy, whether it's entitlement reform, whether it's illegal immigration. Those are all major issues that have just been avoided.
One could look at those as a conservative back point, is that less legislation is best. The conservative viewpoint often preaches that. When you're criticizing the Democrats for not passing enough meaningful laws.
Well, it's not a question about passing enough. It's a question about dealing with the issues that the country is facing. And the country is facing, in Social Security, a system that's going to run amok and run out of money to be able to provide the continuation of benefits that are so many people are so dependent upon. And to do that, you've got to face the issue. You've got to bring it up. Or if you want to talk about illegal immigration, we have a need for a legal migrant population here that will address the needs of particularly our agriculture community. And yet, was that addressed? The answer is no. You have a growing expense in Medicare and Medicaid, and you don't have the revenues coming in to kind of support that system. So, was that addressed? The answer is no. The frustration I have is with the Democrat majority not addressing the issues facing America that are really starting to hurt people. And energy, at the time that we were talking 11 weeks ago, and of course that comment and our whole interview was out there, I think aired by your TV station the next day. And have we heard anything about it since then? Not until now.
And maybe we are hearing about it now because of some comments of fellow Republicans in Congress. Representative Michelle Bachmann from Minnesota, Representative Robin Hayes from North Carolina. Bachmann said Obama has anti-American views. Representative Hayes said liberals hate real Americans that work and achieve and believe in God. Rightly or wrongly, your comments 11 weeks ago are being grouped in with that.
Well, I don't think they have anything to do with those comments. And most of my comments were made with a frustration dealing with the whole failure of this Congress to deal with the energy issue. You know, we brought 7 motions to discharge bills that would have a significant impact on the cost of gasoline to the floor, or tried to bring them to the floor, and the Democrats resisted that. We proposed 14 different bills that would have done things like a more efficient siting of refineries, allowing for the offshore premises to actually be drilled, those outer continental shells. And did they even bring those to the floor? The answer is no. You know, and so it's one can assume what they want to assume, or you can infer what they want to infer. My disappointment is with the Democratic, what I call a do-nothing Congress, and they have, as I mentioned in that interview, passed fewer bills during this term of Congress than in the last 30 years. Now, you don't have the numbers don't necessarily signify quality results, but in this particular case, when you're facing the major issues that this country is facing and you don't do anything about it, well, you can take and assume your own result as a result of that. But is this a political thing? Yeah, I firmly believe that, in fact, this is only surfacing now because my opponent is desperate. And he has brought this up. I think you asked him in an interview earlier today whether or not he had anything to do with it. He ducked the question. But what was the first inquiry I had about this particular interview that you and I had? It came from a reporter out of Washington who got the information from the political website of my opponent. That's where it came from. And by the time the question came to my office to respond, my opponent had taken it off his website. Now, if that isn't, just a purposeful kind of trying to raise an issue, it comes from desperate candidates.
Then I will follow up with your opponent on that for sure. Leslie, your opponent said to me that he obviously wanted you to explain your comments as well. And he says that this is part of that national trend that I hinted at there. Do you deep down believe, when taking just that quote itself, that you firmly believe the Democratic majority wants the American public to suffer? Do you firmly believe that statement in its own, or does this have to be reflected within context?
Well, I think it has to be in the context that we talked about, and it had to deal with the whole energy issue, and it's a frustration of, that I was trying to get something done. Now, I think it's outlandish to think that a comment that I made 11 weeks ago is the beginning of, quote-unquote, a trend of my party some 2.5 months later. I'd like to think that I had that kind of leadership capability and I was that much forefront thinking, but not particularly in this particular guy. I don't understand why my colleagues made the comments that they do. That's not part of what I was trying to talk about. I was talking about the inactiveness of this term of Congress. The Democrats took control a year and a half ago, and at that time they said, we're for change. Well, at that time, you might remember the Dow Jones was at 14,000. Where is it now? It's just less than 9,000, okay? Where was the unemployment rate? It was 4.5%. Where is it now? It's looking at 6%, and they're talking about 7%. Where was the whole issue of confidence of the consumer? It was about 2.5 times. Now there's no confidence. And you look at those kinds of things, and then you look at what the Democrat majority has proposed relative to increasing your taxes, enlarging the government programs, which is a cost to the taxpayer, and there's no wonder that this Congress has the lowest rating in the history of any recorded pollings about how well they're accepted. 9% is just totally unacceptable.
Last question on this topic. Do you believe that those that perhaps don't agree with you are anti-American in any way?
No, I've never accused anybody of being anti-American. We're all Americans. We're here for the right purpose. And we're all trying to do, I think, members of Congress, what is right. We have different philosophies as to how to do that, certainly, and that's where you start to get in the good dialogue, which is what this country is also great about respecting, and that is the freedom of speech.